Ellen.
So good evening and welcome everybody to the City Council regular meeting for June 25th. Happy summer, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. With that, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Please be seated. Welcome, everybody. It's a beautiful evening to be indoors as opposed to the beautiful sunshine we've had recently. I'd entertain a motion for adoption of the agenda, Council.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, concerns, or considerations? Thank you, Council. It's adopted by unanimous consent. I am remiss in not reflecting that we have two council members online. We have Councilmember Muhlenberg and Councilmember Good. Hi, both of you. Can you hear us okay? Great, thank you.
With Councilmember Saunders.
And yeah, Councilmember Saunders is going to be joining us. She is traveling right now. She'll join us as soon as she can for a period of time. With that, we're going to open public comments. The council will not be accepting online public comments. Comments are limited to a 3-minute time limit. This is an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any item within its purview or control. Oral public comments are only accepted in person to ensure the orderly conduct of the meeting. Speakers are limited to a 3-minute time limit. To 3 minutes. Council members may not respond during public comments, but may ask staff to follow up if appropriate. Public comments may not be used to promote or oppose candidates for public office or ballot measures. The mayor or presiding officer may interrupt comments that violate these instructions, are unrelated to the council's purview or control, or otherwise hinder the orderly conduct of the meeting. It's quite a mouthful. Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate that. Okay. Well, goodness. And welcome to all our friends from the PD. And we get to start the evening tonight with public comment from former Chief Hardin. Welcome, Chief. It's very good to see you.
Now you get to hold me to 3 minutes. How about that, Phil?
Can it be done?
An hour long.
And one slide.
So I'm here for Rob. Rob, last of the old guard, the old crew, all the old timers. I did miss it by a month, but I wanted to come back and say how much I appreciated Rob and all the times we've been here. 27 years, an incredible career. So congratulations, Rob. I worked with you my entire career. Out of everyone I've worked with, I probably had the most memorable calls with you. This is tough to talk and like turn around with and see you. But somehow almost all of those calls were involving DUIs. There was a foot pursuit with Clays where we chased a DUI suspect. The taser came out and it turned into switch to sword and get him, Mikey. There was a holding cell date night I won't go into. There was an arresting of a former council member's girlfriend. Don't do any research on this, please. That call was a little inappropriate and it traumatized me forever. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. There was a DUI report that was so detailed and descriptive, I believe the suspect was way too embarrassed to even show up for court. I know you know what that one was. The only time I was sued in my career was because of you. Serving an arrest warrant inside a house in Seattle. And of course, who could forget the famous Tiger Sword call with Rhonda? They even made shirts for this crazy call. It wasn't all perfect. There was guild negotiations, left banana peels in patrol car 545. Eating every 2 hours, including, oh my God, at some point he was eating meals that consisted of several raw butter sticks and dozens of raw eggs. It was gross, but somehow he put those in his system. But he's a fit dude. And there was some tough conversations that we had about work performance. And who can forget about fire growth, the survey. But that is But what I'm most proud of is that you turned it around, you finished your career strong. It's a testament to your character. I've learned so much from you over the years, police tactics, firearms, and fitness. I honestly don't think anyone has a better officer safety tactics, and I don't think anyone writes a better police report, hands down, than Rob. There is no question. Fantastic police work, patrol tactics, any day. There's nobody holds a stick to you. Where am I at? 13 seconds. I've learned so much from you. Let's see. On a personal note, thank you for all the financial advice you've given me over the years, many graveyard shifts on what to buy, what to dump, and when to make changes. Oh, did you seriously do a beep?
So you're gonna.
Wow, that is fantastic. Matt, you rock. That is so good. I'm on the last paragraph.
Why didn't we use that during the police?
I
report?
know, no kidding. Buy the foreign real estate fund. I can honestly say you've made my retirement a whole lot better because of it. Thank you. Rob, thanks for your friendship, your dedication to the profession, 27 years of service to the community, and congratulations on a well-earned retirement. You've earned every minute.
Thanks, Chief. Well spoken. Thank you, Chief Harden. That was awesome. Anyone else? I have no one else signed up here. Anyone else in council chambers that would like to make public comment at this time? Okay, we'll close public comment. Thank you, everybody. We are moving on to proclamations commemorating, recognizing and commemorating July 4th, 2026 as the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America. I must be getting old because I remember when the bicentennial seemed like right in our rearview mirror. America 250, whereas July 4th, 2026 marks the 250th anniversary or semi-quincentennial, see that 10 times fast, of the Second Continental Congress's adoption of the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia in 1776, signifying the founding of the United States of America. And whereas the Declaration of Independence proclaimed timeless principles of profound significance to the national heritage of the United States, including that all are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. And whereas the founding of the United States established the principle of federalism, establishing a decentralized system of government wherein powers are divided between national and state governments, fostering liberty, accountability, and responsiveness to local communities. And whereas local governments are the bedrock of American democracy, providing 336 million residents with the most accountable, responsive, inclusive, ethical, and transparent government in the world. And whereas from the nation's smallest villages to its largest cities, America's local governments have been essential to transforming the United States of America into the greatest and most influential nation in the world history. And whereas the city of Lake Forest Park was first incorporated in 1961 and is proudly served today, I didn't read this far, by Mayor Tom French, council members Tracy Furutani, Larry Goldman, Paula Good, Matt Muhlenberg, Summer Riddle, Josh Rosenau, and Ellen Saunders, along with municipal workforce of 69 dedicated public servants. And whereas the 250th anniversary offers a unique opportunity for the people of Lake Forest Park to reflect on our shared history, honor the diverse contribution of all Americans, celebrate our heritage of liberty, and look ahead to the future we strive to build for future generations. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and the city council of City of Lake Forest Park do hereby recognize and commemorate July 4th, 2026 as the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America, and encourage all residents to participate in commemorative events and activities that reflect our history, celebrate our achievements, and reaffirm our commitment to the ideals of liberty, equality, self-government, and federalism. Signed this 25th day of June, 2026. I don't get goosebumps often, people, but that one is definitely something for the books. Councilmember Riddle.
And I have to say, it is refreshing to reread the Declaration of Independence. It's been a long time, probably maybe high school, but the words are still relevant today, that we still have these, this fire in our belly to make it work. So I would also suggest just read it. It's available online, and yeah, just to ruminate over it a little bit.
Thank you, Councilmember Riddle. And I would offer that Councilmember Muhlenberg put together a reading of the Declaration of Independence a number of weeks ago with some friends, and it was a really special event. There were several people here that read along with the group. It was pretty magical, and every time one reads it, it's extraordinary to think it was written that long ago. Colleagues, any other comments? Or should we move forward? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. We're moving on to the fun part of the evening. We're going to honor Rob Gross, our police department sergeant, Chief Zanella.
Commander Adams, come in. Let's share this moment
Oh,
together.
please.
So a few years ago, Chief Harden told me that one of the best things that happens to you when you're a chief is to hire somebody, right? Fantastic moment. But I think it's great also when you celebrate somebody who gave almost 28 years of his life to help the community and to help the other officers. So please, Sergeant Gross, come here. Want to share something?
Where could I be standing?
Right here, it's working fine, okay? So Sergeant Rob Gross joined the Lake Forest Park Police Department in October 1998 at the age of 25, becoming the youngest officer in the department at that time. Throughout his career, Sergeant Gross has been a dedicated mentor, trainer, and leader. For more than 2 decades, he served as a field training officer, FTO, teaching and mentoring a lot of new officers with a strong emphasis on tactical proficiency, officer safety, and professional excellence. Sergeant Gross earned a reputation as one of the department's most proactive DUI enforcement officers, like Chief Sergeant said, making more than 450 DUI arrests in the course of several years. And his commitment to keep impaired drivers off the road often resulted in at least 1 DUI per night, sometimes 2 DUIs per night, and quite often 3 DUIs per night, which is pretty amazing if you think that it takes a long time to process DUI. So you have to be knowledgeable and efficient in your job when you do a DUI. And you have to do it right away. Additionally, Sergeant Gross became the first Lake Forest Park police officer to serve as SWAT team member. He spent 9 years with the North Sound Metro SWAT team, serving as an entry team member, breacher, and SWAT firearms instructor. His experience and expertise significantly enhanced the department's firearm and tactical training program by introducing advanced SWAT-based movement, tactics, and shooting techniques to all Lake Forest Park officers. Promoted to sergeant in 2016, Sergeant Gross has continued to exemplify professionalism, leadership, and dedication to public safety. In his career, he has worked to ensure that police services are delivered safely, legally, and professionally, while mentoring the next generation of officers and helping develop future leaders within the organization. Sergeant Gross' contribution to the Lake Forest Park Police Department have left a lasting impact on all of us, the agency as a whole, its employees, and also the community. And like I said, he served for almost 28 years. So Sergeant Gross, thank you for your service, your leadership, and your continued commitment to our community.
Thank you.
I don't have anything prepared, but I want to say that when I lateraled here 11 years ago as an officer, Sergeant Gross was one of my first field trainers. And given that we are about the same age, it's a very, very strange thing to see you retiring but I know, but we had a lot of fun. And truly, as Chief Zanella said, Sergeant Gross has been instrumental in the training of our officers, not only in field training, and mentorship and supervisor, being a sergeant, but the firearms training and tactics has been incredible. We've done numerous trainings, obviously with the department, but also with other agencies. And to see that your experience and your professionalism has carried those skills to seeing officers through critical incidents has really been fantastic. So seriously, thank you very much for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You have the certificate, and you like this one? That's retired.
Thank you.
You want to?
All right. Yes, and lastly, we have a tradition within the PD that was started some years ago. In fact, Chief Harden and Dakota have one hanging in the PD. But when we have an officer who has served 15 or more years with us, we provide them with a banner signed by the employees of the PD. And on the day of your retirement, the actual day, we will have you sign one as well.
Nice.
And that will hang forever in the halls of the Lake Forest Park Police Department. But this, on behalf of the PD, is for you. So hang that in your den or trophy room or whatever you have and enjoy it.
I need somebody to hold my loot.
Mike's yours.
Well, first of all, I'm not big on speeches, so I won't even need 3 minutes. You can time me. Plus, I'm kind of have a scratchy voice, but I would like to just say that I am very grateful for the career that I've had here in Lake Forest Park. With the department's been great. I've worked with a lot of talented officers over the years. I've had great leadership from retired Chief Harden and now acting Chief Zanella. And then as a sergeant, so I report to Diego. He's my boss and he's been fantastic. Very, very good guy to work for. And then working in Lake Forest Park, the community, I always felt supported by the good people of Lake Forest Park. And that makes a tough job easier. So that is all.
We had a picture.
Sure, you bet. Let's get a picture here. I apologize that all of our friends couldn't be here today. Yes. I guess we can just stand up here or here.
Maybe we can get the ones.
Yeah, maybe if we're in the, so see what the camera is.
Can you move Matt up? Drag him up. I know, we could try.
Look, I should be awesome powers.
Congratulations. Yeah, wish you all the best.
Mayor, there's been a reminder from Councilmember Muellerberg.
Yep, I saw. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the reminder. If everybody can speak into the mics. Let's see here. Okay, where are we? Oh, yes, Community Park Improvement Project. Our friends Ethan Robertson and William Bolobus are here to join us. Ethan, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Right, you guys can see it up there. And can you guys see it? Perfect. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, this is my community improvement project proposal. My name is Ethan Robertson and I'm working on this project with William Golub. Unfortunately, he was not able to join us here, so it'll be just me. This is my table of contents, so you can see we have not too long and hopefully I'll be able to get through it very quickly. introduction. First off, you're probably wondering, what is a pump track? A pump track works kind of like a swing set. You push down on your handlebars of your bike when the rollers go down and pull up on the ups. And this allows you to not have to pedal. So you pump through the tracks and there's rollers and berms. And so as you go, you use those mechanics to propel yourself. I've actually brought a model. If you want to see kind of what it looks like
Oh, wow.
with the rollers. And I can look more closely later. Our project's main purpose is to create a space in our community for sustainable outdoor entertainment, a place where people can be together, create connections, make friendships without having to be in the way of other people. Like, I know it's kind of a thing at the town center right now for kids my age to hang out in Ross and in the sidewalks around, and this would give them an opportunity to have a space where they could connect with each other and be outside in our beautiful parks. So our goal is to create a track that is accessible to everybody in our community, is easy to get to, and is fun and enjoyable for everybody. So not just teens, but younger kids who are just learning how to ride, and parents who want to do something with their kids over the summer when they have a break, because it's really easy. You don't have to be skilled. You don't have to have a lot of experience. You can just get started and build your capabilities from there. It will foster outside activity and improve people's gross motor functions. It's also encourages people to spend time together with their families instead of online and just glued to a screen. It's biking has also been proven to relieve stress, build coordination, and increase overall health. Our estimated costs, because we're planning for the track to be made from dirt so that it will have better draining. That means it will also be less expensive. We did lots of research and have done our best to calculate how much dirt will be needed, but we think that it will come to around $750 for the dirt to build the track. We also plan to use cinder blocks to build retaining walls for all of the berms so that the track will be it'll last longer and won't erode as people use it. And so we think those blocks will come to about $500. And we also will have to use some water for the compaction process. And I did some research on the city website, and it didn't specify whether or not the property had water access, but that's something I think we could work together to figure out. We also aren't planning to use any heavy machinery in the process because it's not required. Also, it will help have a lesser impact on the environment. And so we'll just need tools like shovels and rakes and tampers to build the track. So we expect that to come to around $250. As far as permitting goes, we in the 2025 capital improvement plan by the, created by the city. Brookside Park, which is the proposed location for this, is listed as an extension of Animal Acres Park and also zoned as an active recreation area. And it says that a active recreation feature is part of the plan. So hopefully that means that this track is a possible solution or possible idea for that feature. We've also reached out to IMBA, which is the International Mountain Biking Association. They are a organization throughout the country who have who maintain a lot of the trails in our area, and we've reached out to them to see if they wanted to have some volunteers come over to lead work parties to build the track. So environmental effects. We have prioritized natural, like preserving the natural habitat. It's 3D printed, and so it's not super heavy. But if you want to look at the track.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. Well,
What are the dimensions of this?
So this long side is 80 feet, that's 75, or that's 75 and that's 60 feet. And it's a custom design track that is specifically built for.
We need to talk to the microphone, Ethan, just so our friends online can hear. Yeah, thank you.
It's a custom design track that is specifically built so that it'll fit that space. Also, so that we won't have to cut down any trees to build the track, and goes around all of the main like the large trees, and doesn't interfere with the wetland area down by the culvert at all. So it's also, if you can see on the maps, I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's in the upland area mentioned in the city plan, about outside of the mapped city, the city mapped stream buffer and critical area. These are our community collaborators who have helped us make this project what we've got right now. Dan Murky is a retired surveyor who is a volunteer at Lake Forest Park Presbyterian Church. John Hoffman is a retired architect who helped me design the track and put together this presentation. Peter Schell is he lives in this neighborhood and is part of this community. He's a track builder who helped come up with the concept for this, and Ross Barslang is also here, who helped me put this presentation together and has been working with the Third Place Commons on the chess set.
Yeah.
Project timeline. So far, what we've done is the research phase, where we looked at possible track designs and locations. Planning, where we found the final location, researched cost estimates, and designed the track that you looked at. Presentation and permitting, working with the city to make this happen. And then construction obviously hasn't happened yet, so I don't know. We estimate that it will about, depending on how much volunteer help we'll get, we're thinking it's gonna take about 3 to 6 months to build it, starting from when we get approval. So whenever that happens and that would be, let's work together to strengthen our community.
Wonderful presentation, Ethan. And colleagues, I think you're looking at a future council member here. Yes, and I would just note, please stay for a couple questions if you don't mind, Ethan. I would just note that he's doing this the right way. I got into all sorts of trouble for building a track down by the Burke-Gilman Trail years ago when I was a kid. Really outstanding presentation, Ethan. Colleagues, questions for Ethan, please. Councilmember Riddle.
Thank you for bringing bike infrastructure to Lake Forest Park.
Yeah.
That's outside of road biking because, we've been up at the Bellingham Pump Track and it's just so much fun. And like you said, it is accessible to our daughter, to me, who's not an avid biker, and my husband, who is a mountain biker. And so it brings a lot of different people together. And it was a really great experience. So I really hope we can work together and find some way to make something like this work.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Councilmember. Deputy Mayor Furtoni.
Hey, thanks, Ethan, for a great presentation. And really, it's great to see basically you wanting to invest so much in the community. Do you have other like-minded people that might help you build this thing? Because it seems like a fair amount of work.
It will be. I do have some experience building tracks. I've been to some work parties over in the Leavenworth area, and William, my partner in this project, has been to several trail construction projects at Duthie, which is a large bike park in I think it's about 40 minutes from here. So, but all the help that we can get will be appreciated to help make this possible.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Councilmember Goldman.
Yeah, I'll echo my colleagues and say it's great to see you up here. Great to see young people getting involved in civic things. I certainly wasn't doing anything nearly this grand when I was your age. I just wanted to introduce a couple of staff members. We have Mark Hoffman is our Community Development Director, who is in charge of permitting, and then Nova Heaton is our Public Works Director. Have you had a chance to meet and talk to either of them?
I have not yet.
I'm thinking they would be really good resources for sort of guiding, what the process might look like to get this built.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Councilmember Rosenau.
Two questions. I guess one of them actually, I'm trying to remember if the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board has any open seats or for recruiting. Because there used to be student seats, Bill. And
I believe that there are student seats available. I do not believe there are regular seats available. So you should,
Okay.
That's a great question.
so I'll introduce you to Corey,
Yeah.
is the coordinator for that. And which it would be good to have a younger voice than some of the other members on that particular committee, but also there's a pool of volunteers there and a lot of knowledge just about how to build parks in the city. So it's a good place to bring the same presentation maybe and work out a schedule with Corey on when that can happen. I'm also curious if you looked at other sites around town, and are there reasons why this might work better than other of the public properties that already exist?
I did look at other possible spots. The main Animal Acres Park is, as far as the research I went, is zoned as a passive recreation park, so that wouldn't work. I know Horizon View Park is a spot where it could be possible. The only problem with that is that it's not super accessible for a good portion of the people who live in Lake Forest Park, because it's up so high that if you can't drive, it's hard to get there. And a lot of our other parks like Grace Cole and like the waterfront parks in our area, and Whispering Willows, which is right near here, are wetland and restorative protected areas, so those wouldn't be possible. One possible location where this could also work is 5-acre woods, but it's also a passive zoned as a passive recreation area. So some more there would be some more hurdles to get through to make that possible. So
Yeah, I know one of the longer term goals with the existing Parks and Recreation Plan is to try to have more parks out throughout more of the city. And so I guess we don't have the land yet, but
Yeah.
having pump tracks else, we probably don't need more than one.
Yeah.
Count out locations for
Thank
us.
you, Councilmember. I want to check with our colleagues online. Councilmember Good or Councilmember Muhlenberg, any questions or comments for Ethan? Oh, there you go. We can hear you sort of. Try again.
Okay,
There you go.
well, this computer is, I can hardly hear, people presenting unless they're really into their mics. So, but I just wanted to say what an excellent presentation and an excellent research of the park types, permits and everything, because that's really impressive. So I would want to say I'm impressed by the presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Muhlenberg.
I would certainly echo that sentiment, Ethan. You've done a tremendous job. Very impressed by what you've brought. And I am the liaison to the Parks Committee, so I hope to have an opportunity to see you in person and see this presentation again with that group.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I would just add that Ethan, this is your second public speaking engagement in 3 weeks, isn't it? Because you did the chess sets and off the cuff, as it were. So Ethan has shown himself to be an excellent public speaker, an excellent presenter.
Yeah.
So if there are no further questions, thank you very much, Ethan. We really appreciate it. And it does illustrate the point that we've been talking about it for a long time, that more active spaces are essential for a sense of community and well-being for everybody. So, and I'm the reason why there are no skateboarding signs here at Lake Forest Park Mall. So that illustrates it as well. Thank you again for your time, and hopefully we can get some of these folks connected with you on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues. Let's see, where are we? Community consent calendar. I know council. Thank you, everyone. It's nice to see you all. Yeah, I understand that there's a comment on the consent calendar, but I'd like to entertain a motion for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Goldman or Vice Chair Goldman.
Yes, thanks. I'm not pulling anything, but I just wanted to comment on items D and E. That's resolutions 2085 and 2086. This is an extension of the agreements we approved 2 weeks ago on permitting agreements with Sound Transit's BRT project. The reason why these are in the consent calendar rather than us talking about them explicitly is because it's really almost a clerical thing. That 2 weeks ago, we approved a contract with Pace Engineering. Apparently they changed their name. And so we need to basically approve a new contract with the correct name. And so it's a new contract, it's a new resolution, but it's minor enough that it can be in the consent agenda.
Thank you for the clarification, Vice Chair Goldman. I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Furtani stepped out for a moment, but I think we're safe in assuming that we can proceed here. All those in favor of adoption of the consent calendar, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? The ayes have it. It passes. He's coming back. Do I hear an aye from the side of the room? Consent calendar.
Sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you, council members. I appreciate that. Okay, moving on to older business. I don't know about that. Items for discussion, consideration, and/or action. And we're starting off the road safety plan, previously termed the local road safety plan. This is the third presentation. We're going to be, you all be considering action. And Director Heaton is here to answer any questions.
Yes,
Sing us a
presentation.
song,
Presentation
anything you'd
is
like.
not an appropriate word for this situation. I'm here to answer questions. I think I've appropriately kind of presented it before, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have now.
Let me start with our friends online. Councilmember Good, do you have any questions, Director Heaton? And I'll let Councilmember Muhlenberg chime in if he would like to raise his hand since he's off screen. Colleagues, any other questions for Director Heaton?
Just,
Councilmember Riddle.
just a clarification on record. Has anything changed from the last time we've seen the spreadsheet that you want to highlight?
No changes to the spreadsheet from the last
Okay.
time.
Thank you very much.
Looking around the horn here. Get me ready for a time.
I just wanted to thank you for the work that you've put into that. I think it's a really great roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well done. Hearing no more questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion for adoption of the Road Safety Action Plan. Make sure I get the vernacular director.
Right.
Please.
I move the Safety Action Plan be approved.
Been moved and you guys can thumb wrestle. I think Councilmember Rosa beat you to the punch
beat
on
me,
this one.
yeah.
So it's been moved and seconded to adopt the Road Safety Action Plan. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, checking online for our friends there. Oh, okay, all those in favor of adoption, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it. Thank you, Council. It passes unanimously. We're moving on to ordinance. Thank you very much, Director Heaton. Moving on to Ordinance 26-1317, Master Use Permit for Forged Fiber 37 LLC. This is the third presentation for consideration of action. Mr. McLean.
I'm here to answer questions, but also online is Miss Nations from Forge Fiber, and I'll let her answer Councilmember Muhlenberg's question.
Oh, thank you very much, Clerk McLean.
She wants to unmute herself. There she is.
Hi, can you hear us okay?
Yes. Can you
Yeah,
hear
good
me?
evening. Yes, welcome.
Yes, happy to answer any questions. I believe, Matt, are you referring to the one sent to me via email?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, let me pull that up. So effectively, Forged Fiber is a wholesale provider. And so they don't provide the retail internet services, but AT&T Fiber will be their anchor tenant. And then it is an open access network, so there could be future providers as well, but currently the anchor tenant is AT&T, and so that would be the internet option to residents.
Thank you, Ms. Nations. Councilmember Muhlenberg, any questions or thoughts?
No, that was my question. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions for Ms. Nations or Clerk McLean? Okay, let's move forward then. I once again would entertain a motion for adoption.
I move that we adopt ordinance 26-1317, master use permit for Forged Fiber 37 LLC.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 26-1317, master use permit for Forged Fiber 37 LLC. Any questions or comments, colleagues? Hearing none, all those in favor of adoption signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Ayes have it. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Nations. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a great
Have a
day.
great evening. Okay, we're moving on to ordinance 26-1318, amending the 25-26 budget. This is the second presentation.
Yes.
Oh, hello. I was looking around. I didn't know who had the ball on this one. Hi, Director Vaughn.
It's still
Welcome.
me. Thank you. So I am here presenting the budget amendment for the second touch. We did go over it at the last council meeting very thoroughly. Because I'm online this time, I was not anticipating to go over it quite in such detail. But as Budget Chair Riddle requested to hold so that further questions could come forward, we're bringing it back to have a more detailed, another discussion if there's further questions on the amendment at this time. So at this time, I'm welcome any questions, or if you would like me to do an overview,
Let's tee up-
I'm open to either.
Let's check on questions first, Director Vaughn, and see where we go from there. Colleagues, questions for Director Vaughn?
I was
Councilmember
more of a
Robinson.
technical, just for the timing, was your hope that we would, is the expectation that we adopt this today, or is this going to go to a third touch?
If there are, oh,
Go right
is
ahead.
that for me, Mayor?
Please go ahead, Director Vaughn.
Oh, okay. So the anticipation was if there were no questions, the desire would be to move it forward this evening. If there are questions, or you would prefer to have it come back on the consent calendar for the third touch, open to that option too. That's completely up to the questions and the temperature of the council.
Thank you, Director Vaughn. Councilmember Rosenau. Colleagues, what's your pleasure for this? Well, let's continue with questions if there are any more. I think it's fairly straightforward, but I don't want to make assumptions. Okay.
Yeah,
Councilmember
as far as timing, it would be nice to get a third touch, just because we usually spend a lot of time on these budget related items. But since my colleagues and I don't really have any comments or concerns, I would be open to approving it this evening if my colleagues are interested in that.
Thank you, Budget Chair. Thoughtful remarks. Vice Chair Goldman.
Since there aren't any substantive questions, I would be okay with waiving the three-touch rule. Also, considering that Finance Director Vaughn will be fleeing the city at the end of June, and so I think if we approve it now, then just get that off the plate for our transition to a new finance team.
Colleagues? I'm seeing nods up there. Sorry, I'm going to pull this closer because I'm remiss. It's not speaking to the microphone. Deputy Mayor Fortani.
So I think I'm going to do this in order this time. I move that we waive the three-touch rule on Ordinance 2613-18, amending the 2025-26 budget.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to waive the three-touch rule on Ordinance 2613-18, amending the 2025-2026 budget. Comments, questions?
I'd like to speak on the motion. As a lot of the council members up here have said, that this is not a controversial thing. We don't really have any substantive questions for the finance director, nor have we heard a whole lot from our community about this particular amendment. So I think it's safe to proceed with it. And as has been pointed out, there is some urgency in the sense that we're going to not have our finance director as of the end of the month, and it'd be great to just, as the vice chair said, get it off our plate.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments?
I would just add that, for the most part, these are things that we have already talked about at previous meetings. They've been well aired out before this amendment came forward. And so I think that's why it's as straightforward as why there have been as few questions today as I think.
Vice Chair Goldman.
Reading the ordinance, as an ordinance, the effective date is 5 days from when it passes, which would be June 30th. And so, facetiously, we're going to be keeping you busy up until your final day. But more genuinely, I do want to thank you. You've been very, you've done a lot of attention to detail with budgets. And so I want to thank you for your service to the financial health of the city.
Hear, hear.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Vice Chair Goldman. Okay, there is a motion and a second on the floor to waive the three-touch rule regarding Ordinance 2613. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Ayes have it to waive the three-touch rule on ordinance 26-13-18. Deputy Mayor Furtani, round the horn.
Now I'd like to move ordinance 26-13-18 for amending the 2025-26 budget for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 26-13-18, amending the 2026 budget with waiving the three-touch rule. Any further comments or concerns? All those in favor of adoption, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it, passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Director Vaughn, and I'll add a here to your excellent service to our community as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to be moving on to, yes, Deputy Mayor Furtani.
In light of the fact that I don't think Councilmember Saunders is online yet.
Okay.
Okay. Can I propose that we move 9A in front of 8D?
Let's move both 9A and 9B.
Okay,
Let's do both of them if that is acceptable to you.
that works with me.
Colleagues, do I hear a second to move 9A and B ahead of item 8D?
Second.
Okay, any questions or concerns? Checking with our colleagues online? Nope. Okay, all those in favor of moving item 9A and B in advance of 8D, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Ayes have it. Okay, the agenda is amended. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Welcome. Let's see where I'm going to scroll down and see where we are. Oh, here we go. We are in resolution 26-2087, authorizing the mayor to execute the youth and amateur sports fourth amended grant agreement, Get Active, Stay Active program with King County for implementation of Horizon View Park improvements project. This is the first presentation. Corey, welcome.
Hi. Yeah, so this is an old grant from 2019 that was part of a Horizon View improvement project. The pickleball courts were done at that time, and this is extra funding, different pocket that the King County Parks has graciously let us stall until 2026. So we are going to look at improving the entrance off of 200 Northeast 201st Place. That trail entrance is pretty degraded right now, and Nova has pitched to do it'll be a safe preserving the tree roots and fixing some stormwater issues over there. So this funding will take care of that. And then if there's leftover funding, we look at some playground or the soccer field improvements. So this is really just scope change, bringing it back. It's a new agreement, but we can now start spending.
Thank you, Ms. Mattson. We really appreciate your efforts on the community's behalf. Colleagues, questions? Deputy Mayor Furtani.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this to our attention, Director Mattson. And I'm wondering, is what did the Parks and Rec Board give a recommendation on this, or have they talked about this at all?
Nope, this is just like taking care of basic park maintenance. So yeah, not something I would bring to.
Vice Chair Goldman.
I apologize for not emailing you this question in advance. So this is the fourth version of this grant agreement. And so can you clarify what was the scope of the first three versions? And is that work that we completed or we decided not to do?
So the first agreement was towards pickleball and the basketball lining and the repaving of the pickleball, which we took care of. It was cheaper than we originally planned for. Donnell was the ones who actually got this grant for us back in 2019. And so this has just been put on the back burner. And now we have time to use the funds and implement work that needs to be done at Horizon View.
Thank you for your question. And for the record, notice a staff member used the word cheaper. Doesn't happen often. Please, Councilmember Roden.
This work intersect, I know that there is our transportation improvement plan work in that area also. Does it connect with that? Is it all, it feels like it's all tied together, but.
I'm gonna come and take
Director
that
Neal.
one for her. This does actually connect right up with some of the multimodal improvement plans we're looking at. We're actually looking to do the combined pathway right up to this crossing, and then connects up to this park. And then also, I just want to throw back in what Corey mentioned is that we've ordered some kind of root-friendly subgrade materials. They're like plastic egg carts, you could almost call them, that you put over the roots, and then we're gonna pave on top of that to create space for the roots to continue to grow underneath the trail and hopefully also get some drainage underneath the trail. So we're pretty excited about trying this product to see how it works. This is definitely a trial to see how it works in our city because we have so many areas where we have the trees and the trails or the roads next to each other. We really are looking for ideas outside of the box. So this grant has sort of helped to make it available for us to give something like this a try.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions? Looking to our colleagues online. Councilman Muhlenberg are good. Any questions for Ms. Mattson or Ms. Heaton? No? Okay.
Just
Yes, Councilmember
a
Riddle.
question about timing. Do you have a timeline in mind for this? And is there any urgency to approve this?
I do have a timeline in mind for this, and there is some urgency to improve this. We have a contractor ready to go, and we have items on order, and we would like to actually start this in the next couple of weeks. So we really would request that you waive the 3-touch rule and get this approved now so that we can get our project done mid-July and get it open again.
Colleagues, Deputy Mayor Furtoni.
So just to be clear, then the work would be done on that piece of the trail that's kind of on the north side of the park, across from the church.
That is correct. That is the area and all the way up the hill.
Okay, and I'm just trying to picture basically would the trail look different at that point, or would it look pretty much the same?
Aside from no longer having all the bumps in it, it will
Right.
look pretty much the same.
Wonderful, because that is a nice secluded part of the park, and I would
It
hate to
is.
see it opened out or anything like that. So, okay.
Vice Chair Goldman.
So reading the first page of the agreement, it's youth and amateur sports, get active, stay active program. Just gonna spitball something here. In the event this comes in under the $25,000 budget, might some of the extra funds be used for bicycle pump paths in a different park?
I'm not gonna actually comment on that because I would hate to jump ahead of the Parks Board on something like some kind of an answer like that.
This money is slated for Horizon View only improvements, and so the soccer field or playground equipment would be the next look at after this. And part of the reason why it was cheaper originally is the water district gave the water fountain up there. Originally that was part of this grant. So that's why it was cheaper. So
Okay.
Colleagues, any other questions or comments?
We have a hand on this.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Good.
I think that any time that you can remove bumps in a trail or roadway, it's a very prudent move. So I'm in favor of moving forward.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, I'd entertain a motion for waiving a 3-touch rule. Councilmember Riddle.
I move to suspend the 3-touch rule for finding the top of the page. Resolution number 26/2087, authorizing the mayor to execute the youth amateur sports grant contract. Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to suspend the 3-touch rule on resolution 20. Put my pen through that. 2620. Is that 37?
8-7.
8-7. Thank you. Authorizing the mayor to execute the youth and amateur sports 4th amended grant agreement. Councilmember Riddle.
And to speak to the motion, as we've heard, we have a project that's ready to go. We have funding that is a grant. And so we always want to just move those along as quickly as we can so the community can see the benefit as quickly as they can. So I propose that we waive the 3-touch rule.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on the motion, main motion?
We've been waiting to spend this money for 6 years.
Spend it already, right? All those in favor of waiving the 3-touch rule, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Ayes have it. I'd entertain a motion for adoption of resolution 26-2087 with suspension of 3-touch rule.
Okay.
That's right.
I move resolution number 26-2087, authorizing the mayor to execute the youth amateur sports grant contract with King County Parks for implementation of the Horizon View Park Improvements Project.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded twice. Any further comments, questions? Deputy Mayor Verdantas.
I just wanted to thank, Director Mattson, especially you, as well as Director Heaton, that, after 7 years that, we are finally working on this and moving it forward. I think that's wonderful. And it's a testament to having city staff who've been around for a while, because it helps to basically keep continuity in a lot of the programs we're trying to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments? Councilman Riddle.
And I would like to thank Director Heaton. Early conversations with you when you first came on was, let's get some early action items. Let's really start making improvements in the city. They may be small, but let's show that we're making improvements. And I appreciate that this is a project that you've been able to work with Corey to get funding and to use the funding that we have. So I really appreciate you moving this through quickly.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. Any other comments? All those in favor of adopting resolution 26-2087, authorizing the mayor to execute the youth and amateur sports 4th amended grant agreement with suspension of 3-touch rule, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? The ayes have it. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, council. Okay, we're moving on to resolution 26-2088, authorizing the mayor to execute the climate resilience capital construction grant agreement with King County for implementation of a Blue Heron Park climate resilience project. This is a first presentation. Ms. Mattson, seems like we've seen you before. Welcome back.
Thank you. So yes, many might be aware that Linda, on behalf of Park Board and her other organizations she's involved in, has started work parties back at Blue Heron Park, revitalizing that, just getting invasives out, putting some new plants in, and the idea is to make this a climate demonstration of what you can do in your own home, and we'll bring in new signage and climate-friendly plants and all that sort of stuff. So this is a grant, they're calling it COUNCILMEMBER grants. Rod Dombowski awarded us the $10,000 for doing this. So this funding will likely go towards the new signage that will do a lot of educational outreach out there. And Linda's found money through Rotary and some other organizations that will be able to do plants and some other updates out there. So that's
Thank you,
the
Ms.
Blue
Mattson.
Heron project.
This is another one of those cases where we might want to suspend the 3-touch rule because people want to give us money. Questions or comments from Ms. Mattson, please.
Hi, and thanks again for another grant. And the question I had on this one was timeline. If the grant's approved, can the work be done this summer?
Yeah, so we're staging it and using different pockets of money in places. So there's work parties on the second Saturday every month out there. And so they're just removing invasives right now and getting the park cleaned up. But this will allow us, we'll have to do like a cultural resource look at this before we start digging in for new plantings and signage. But this will just allow us to start really looking at finding someone to work with developing signage out there with us.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Mattson? I would like to big shout out to Linda Holman, who's been a tour de force there. She is a real dedicated volunteer to the community, and a shout out to the people that originally helped clear that park many decades ago, including predecessor of mine, Mayor Dave, helped with that back in the 90s. And my late father. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Roche? Otherwise, excuse me, I keep saying Roche Matson. Would you like to? Yeah, Councilmember Rowe.
I just wanted to highlight in the scope of work, something that I know is a priority for Ms. Linda Holman is that pollinator plants and really providing a foundation of flowering plants that can help our bees. And I know that's a passion of hers, so I'm really happy to see it here in the project summary in the Exhibit B.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor for Attorney.
And one other thing I want to call out is the fact that it is called the Climate Resilience Grant. And I think this is something that the county is starting to shift some resources towards. So it's just so handy that we happen to hire a climate manager in this time period, right? Yes. So in any case, I think we'll be seeing a lot more of this funding source.
Okay. Council, what's your pleasure? Deputy Mayor for Attorney.
So I'd like to move to. Did you phrase that?
Waive the three-touch rule.
No, you said it in a nicer way.
Oh, did I?
No.
Oh, I don't know what I said.
Are we suspending it for today or are we putting
Yeah,
it?
Suspend.
You said for
That's what I
next
said.
time.
No.
Is that okay, we've done it both ways at different times.
We're just going to suspend on this. So I propose that we suspend the three-touch rule for resolution 2088, authorizing the mayor to execute the climate resilience capital construction grant agreement.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to waive the three-touch rule on resolution 262088. Deputy Mayor for Attorney.
And along the lines of the previous resolution, the fact is that this is a grant that can benefit our city and our community really, really soon. So I think there's no reason to hesitate on it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of waiving the three-touch rule on resolution 262088, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, everyone. Any nays? The ayes have it. Let's move on to the next part. Deputy Mayor for Attorney.
I'd like to move resolution 2088, authorizing the mayor to execute the climate resilience capital construction grant agreement.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt resolution 2088 with suspension of three-touch rule. Any further comments or thoughts? Hearing none, all those in favor of adoption of resolution 262088, authorizing the mayor to execute the climate resilience capital construction grant agreement with King County for implementation of Blue Heron Park Climate Resilience Project with suspension of three-touch rule, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? The ayes have it. It passes unanimously. Thank you, council members. Matt, do we have the band back together?
I believe we do.
We have the band back together. All right. Great. Colleagues, we're moving on to resolution 262084, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake Forest Park, Washington, providing for a ballot measure to be submitted, excuse me, to qualify the qualified electors of the city at the general election to be held on November 3rd, 2026, in conjunction with the state general election of a proposition authorizing the city to levy regular property taxes in an amount in excess of the limitations provided in Chapter 84.55 RCW for public safety services beginning in 2027, setting forth the ballot title and providing for other related matters. This is for possible action, my friends. Administrator Hill, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Council, and good evening. Just as the Mayor mentioned, this is for possible action this evening. This is your third touch on the resolution. First was at Budget and Finance, and then the COW on Monday, and the final version that you have before tonight. But I also wanted to point out the legislative history that this is the 12th time we have talked about budget challenges and potential levy going back to February 21st of this year at your council retreat. So that also segues into the first few slides you're going to see here. You've seen these before, but we will walk through it. So budget challenges. As you know, we've discussed this actually for many years. It's something that is not new to this city. It's just that we have a structural deficit and it continues to get worse, especially with inflation as it has been, and then additional costs on top of inflation. Public safety being our largest single departmental budget makes up 34% of our budgeted expenses. And you can see the whole list up there from officers and gear to dispatch, mental health, jail costs, insurance, vehicles, prosecuting attorney, public defense, mandatory training. That all comes under the auspices of public safety and everything it takes to run that. The diagram you see there on the screen is out of our adopted budget. This is from the 25-26 adopted budget. Just shows you the breakdown of the costs throughout the city. I did want to point out that we need to get some decimal points in here. Social services shows 0%, but we actually do spend dollars on social services. It is just less than 1%, and that's how that software rounded. So we are spending money on those services. As I mentioned, inflation has risen more than 24% in 4 years. Last year, it was just under 24% over 4 years. You take out that year prior and add the last one, we are now over 24% in inflation over the last 4 years. When you adopted this budget, well, let me back up. Since 23 and 24 biennium, these are the costs that have increased beyond inflation. These are not inflationary pressures. These are 9/11 dispatch. When we went from Bothell City providing dispatch to the city of Lake Forest Park, they took a look at their finances and figured out they could save a lot of money by no longer providing those services. We were getting a screaming deal. Bothell went with Norcom and saw a decrease in price. We went with Norcom and realized $284,000 increase, and that is an annual increase. Jail costs, almost $282,000 per year. That has fluctuated kind of up and down as jails have come back online, but those jails have also gone through renovations. And I was just talking to Chief Zanella earlier today that the costs have more than doubled for Snohomish County Jail just in the past few years. So while those are now available to us again, they're not at the price they used to be. Insurance costs you see in 23 and 24, right around $192,000 increase. We've seen that fall off a little bit. We've seen more regular increases in, under 8% increases to that over the past couple of years. And then, as you know, prosecuting, and there goes my slideshow. Prosecuting attorney contract was just approved at an increase of just over $106,000 a year. As you remember, that was something we had not negotiated since the early 2000s, 2001 to be exact. And all that was in there was a cost of living adjustment. No increases for the substantial costs of doing business today. And then public defense services increased by $50,000 per year. That's an impact of new state law or the Supreme Court stating that public defenders can only serve so many people per year. That's not a bad thing. It just means that there's more cost, and that will continue to escalate as those numbers ratchet down for public defenders over the next 10 years. So without a vote of LFP residents, property owners within the city, we are limited to a state law that limits growth in revenue to 1%, which for 2026 amounts to $35,141. Go back one slide, and you see that doesn't make a dent in those increased costs, plus 24% inflation over 4 years. Just as a reminder, the 24-25 biennial budget, council cut about $455,000 and needed staffing, fleet, services, and operations. Even with those cuts, we had to add $900,000 to the budget from savings just to balance the budget. And we budgeted so tight that in 25, and again, just tonight, council has had to amend the 25-26 biennial budget just to pay for ongoing costs. We didn't put any new shiny objects in the budget tonight. Some grants that we got, but as far as operations, no changes, nothing new. So levy breakdown, get into the levy rate a little bit. Total maximum allowable property tax levy rate within the city of Lake Forest Park is $3.60 per thousand of assessed value. The three rates that are within that limit are the current city rate of 0.66, the current fire district rate of 0.70, and the current library rate of 0.23. So you can see we only are at $1.61 out of $3.60 that's allowed within the city of Lake Forest Park. And then any one of those three entities, through a vote of the people, could raise those rates. How that dives into this next slide is that the total levy rate that you see there of just over $9, $9.06, we'll just round, per 1,000 has $4.39 of senior taxing districts, and those are listed up there on that graph. This is from King County Assessor's website. And then the rest that aren't shown that make up that difference are what are called junior taxing districts. And as you can see, that is a taxing district other than state, county, county road district, city or town, port district, or public utility district. So, and I've listed out everybody I could think of up there. I may have missed one, but that's just to represent to you how that breaks out. So what is before you in your packet tonight is a resolution that the City Council requested the administration put together for you that represents at 0.2222 cents per 1,000 assessed value to every property within the city of Lake Forest Park. And then this graph here, this is the 2026 median home value as put forth by King County at $963,000. And then we give you the breakdown up and down of that so you can get an idea based on your property assessed value, what that would cost you per year. You can see the monthly and the annual costs there. And then the other calculation that has been run is that 22 cents per thousand increase across the board would raise just over $1.2 million. And these are projections. These are not exact dollar amounts, but this is based on the assumed citywide property value increasing 6% this year for the 2027 assessed value. I looked at some projections, and not projections, but where homes are selling, they're actually selling less than they were last year. So where this ends up, not sure, but we did assume that there will be an increase in property value across the board. And that shows terribly up there. For those of you at home, please download this and take a look at it. The reason that it is up there is I wanted to demonstrate under levy, the bottom line of levy in the gray. If you look at 29 and 30 and 31 and 32, you see that even with this levy in place, if it were to pass, that the city will still be drawing just over $200,000 a biennium out of reserves. This is to take some of those extra reserves that the city has and put that towards these ongoing costs so that it's not all falling on the ratepayers. And just for those at home, in 27-28, you see $1.6 million going into the Strategic Opportunity Fund. That was action taken previously by council to move 1.6 million, have direct the administration to move that so that that is set aside for future opportunities yet to be identified that would have to be then brought back before council before those dollars could actually be allocated for expense. And I stand for questions, and you can go back to any slide you need.
Administrator Hill, appreciate it. Deputy Mayor Furtani.
Yeah, and thank you, Administrator Hill, for a great slide presentation. I hope that everybody takes this to heart. I want to restate something you said, just to be clear, is that this proposed levy lid lift does not address by itself, does not address the city's fiscal crisis. Instead, what it does is it allows for a more soft landing to a number of reserves and the unallocated fund balance that the council agreed we could live with.
Correct.
Thanks. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Just a
Thanks, Mayor Riddle.
clarification, the 455,000 that we cut was for the 25-26.
It was.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you have 24-25 in your slide, so you might want to just update that before you publish.
I'm going to be really embarrassed if I did that.
Right there, second bullet.
Oh, hell.
I know, it's okay.
I apologize.
I just
The
wanna make sure.
25-26, there is no 24-25, it's 23-24 and 25-26.
Yep.
So
Okay.
I just want to make sure we're putting out
Yes.
consistent information to our community.
That
That is
should
all.
say 25-26 biennial budget cut at approximately $455,000.
And other than that, I just want to thank the administration. Of course, Director Vaughn, if you're still on, probably not.
He's still on there.
Head over there.
Small.
Still works here.
I don't know if she could take the trauma of this. It's just so much going on. But I wanted to thank you all for how much you supported council in our efforts to try to really understand how we're going to bring our city forward through the next 3 bienniums. You guys have been instrumental in us understanding what the concerns are, what our options are, and eventually what the current proposed solution is. So thank you very much for all your time and effort that happened behind the
Absolutely.
scenes.
That's what we're here for. And I would just like to bring up a couple of points on the proposed levy that council's looking at running. Is this would be a 6-year levy. So it would have to be reauthorized in 2032 to go forward. It also anticipates the council being able to take cost of living increases during the 5 of the 6 years to keep up with inflation, so that when we get to the end, and if this were to pass and that council's asking for reauthorization, it's not another huge jump. You know, we're just kind of rolling forward. So it's been very well thought out of how to move this forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Riddle. Councilor Rosenau.
I'll echo your thanks to staff, and also, I mean, as the most junior of us up here, to the colleagues here and online. I think that it's a really good process that we've gone through to come collectively, staff and council together, to a good consensus on this after years of debate that's gone on over all of this. And so I think it's hard decisions, and I think we came to a really good place, and I appreciate all the support from staff, making sure that we knew where we were getting to. I did want to can we go back to the pie chart of the city budget?
City budget. Slide 1.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen this before, but I think for people who may be tuning into this conversation in progress, I think a lot of people would not picture that being the distribution of where we put our money. And it's often said that a budget is a statement of values, and I think it's always worth just reflecting on this and making sure going forward that we have the options to make sure that this gets distributed over time in ways that reflect the values of the community and the values of the city. And so and this is stripped down and over a lot of years of again, that really hard work to get this to a place where we're providing the essential things that everybody needs to have. And if there are conversations out there in the community of anything that people would want to add to this, things that people see that 0 for social services, and they may say, well, why? That's a conversation that this buys us 6 years to have that conversation and to say, what do we want that to look like? And if we go for renewal, if we have other conversations, is this what we want to have? Do we want to go beyond that 22 cents? And if so, in what directions would that look like? But this is maintaining that status quo. It's written into the text as 6%, or that it's maintaining the levels of in the public safety part of this, which is the lion's share of it. So it's always striking whenever I look at it that I think what people imagine the city does may not match that chart, and it's important to highlight. So thank you.
Thank you. Excellent point, Councilmember Rosenau. Councilmember Good, you want to start, or Councilmember Muhlenberg, our friends online?
For comment?
Yes.
Oh, okay. As you know, being here the last time we did this go around, I want to thank the staff for stepping up and answering the hard questions that were asked previously, and for taking the steps to make sure that the research and the projections were all in line so that people could see them and see that they are needed. That's my comment.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Muhlenberg, any comments or questions?
I mean, I made quite a few comments at the cow earlier this week. I think the process we've gone through has been quite thorough and quite transparent to the public. There has been dozens of opportunities for the community to come in and talk to council and provide feedback on how we manage the budget and where we're going. I've listened to a lot of people in the community, and I hear a lot of enthusiasm and support to get this done for the city because of a clear understanding of what we provide and the value it creates in this community that we have. So I'm excited that we're here at this point. I hope that we get to the point where we approve this motion tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Fratani.
Take comments first.
Yeah, Vice Chair Gold.
Yeah, I'm glad we've taken such a thorough data-driven approach. I also want to point out that we have tried to be responsive to feedback we've heard from the community based on the version of the levy we tried last year. In particular, one of the questions that we were asked is why were we keeping so much money in the general fund? And if you were to go to that spreadsheet that Administrator Hill provided, you'll see that we are spending the general fund down much more substantially. So we are trying to take community feedback on board with how we changed this year's levy compared to last year's version.
Thank you, Vice Chair Gold. Deputy Mayor Fratani.
Oh, I want to make sure nobody else has questions specifically for the administrator or for any of the staff. Okay. All right, then I formally propose I want to move Resolution 26-2084, resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake Forest Park, Washington, providing for a ballot measure to be submitted to the qualified electors of the city at the general election to be held on November 3rd, 2026.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 26-2084, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake Forest Park, Washington, providing for a ballot measure to be submitted to the qualified electors of the city at the general election to be held on November 3rd, 2026. In conjunction with the state general election, of proposition authorizing the city to levy regular property taxes, excuse me, in an amount in excess of the limitations provided in Chapter 84.55 RCW for public safety services beginning in 2027, setting forth ballot title and providing for other related matters. Colleagues, comments on the main motion, please.
I want to speak to the motion. I think, as has been pointed out by many people on the dais and off, that we've done a lot of work on this. It's not just the culmination of the last 12 meetings we've had, but also the previous discussions we've had last year and a few years before that. And every time, as the vice chair has pointed out, we've shaped basically the proposal to fit our community's values. And I think, this time we've really taken on board a lot of the comments. And I appreciate basically the fact that we're going to be doing a significant more outreach on this. We're going to be basically sitting at farmers market. We're going to be sitting at various corners. Councilmember Muhlenberg, I think we could all take an example of what you do, so appreciate that very much. But the fact is, just getting out there more in the community over the summer and into the fall and talking about, why we need to do this and why we're asking you for this contribution, because we really need to be able to fund public safety. I love the fact that one-page sheet that Administrator Hill showed earlier, that's only a part of it. That doesn't even account for 3 police positions, plus basically RACER, that regional crisis response. The fact is that none of these things have gotten cheaper. The analogy that I've seen made about basically physical crises in cities is it's similar to a tsunami. We always draw a picture of a tsunami as a big wave, right? But tsunamis are literally a dangerous thing. It's so dangerous because basically the level of the water literally changes behind it. It's not like the wave goes away. So even though these costs seem very flashy, they're not one-time costs. They are recurring annual costs. And the fact is that literally our expenditures have risen to that level and it's not going away. So I think this is a really responsible way that we're taking to actually address the fiscal crisis our city has. I really thank my colleagues and the staff and the mayor for basically all the work they've done on this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bertani. Colleagues, Budget Chair Riddle.
Thank you. And as budget chair, I have to say that I really appreciate my colleagues in your effort to lean in. We didn't have an official everybody on the Budget and Finance Committee like we do during the budget, but you all showed up because you all feel very passionate about ensuring that the city has financial stability. I really appreciated the process you guys allowed me to take you through. I think some of the earlier meetings were a little discussion oriented, and I think some people didn't know where it was going, but I learned a lot from you all as to where you wanted to go from that. And we were able to sort of laser focus down onto 3 specific points. We came to agreements, and out of that flowed what the levy rate would be. So we started with our needs and we resulted in a levy rate. And you guys did an amazing job, going through that process. I really want to appreciate your efforts in sticking with that. And of course, again, the administration for bringing all the correct data to us and supporting us with the spreadsheet and such. But from that, I feel like we have an ability to have that conversation with the community, because we can say why we got to where we were. And I think we can all say the same thing, which I think is critical as we go out and the community asks us why. So again, appreciate you all for going through this process and getting us to where we are today. And I look forward to continuing having this discussion with the community when they ask us why, and we can give an answer.
Thank you, Councilmember Riddle. Mr. Goldman.
Yes, I'm supporting this. It is not a decision that I've made lightly, but I do think it's the prudent thing to do. And something I really want to emphasize is that this is a levy that will let us maintain the status quo. We're not looking to expand the police department. This is to maintain the current size of our police department. This is to maintain our membership in RACER for behavioral health crisis services. This is to maintain levels of prosecutor and public defender services to provide to the public that move through our municipal court system. And so I do think it's very important to emphasize that this is what we need in order to make our budget pencil out over the next 6 years.
Thank you, Councilmember Goldman. Colleagues, any other questions? Councilmember Rosenau.
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today, that in the year since the last vote like this, the citizens of Lake Forest Park, about 75% of the public voted for a school levy, and then 75% voted for another school levy. There was about 80% vote in support of the King County Parks levy. There's about 82% support for Medic One. We are a city that pays our bills, and we understand that and we are taking on that burden because there are services that we value and that we want to see that it reflects our values, it reflects our needs, and it's the city that we want to live in. And I think for me, I look at what we're the things that we're talking about putting this money towards, and they reflect the needs of the community and they reflect the values of the community. I think that there are important things that we would lose without having the funds available to buy those services and to provide those services for the community that people want. Everyone wants 911. Everyone wants to be sure that if someone is arrested, that they are taken where they need to be, and that they see the courtroom that they need to be in, that they have a public defender, that they have a prosecutor who has the skills to bring that through. So all of that, these are and that we have the behavioral co-response, that we have a police department that's independent, that values community policing, that values the partnership with behavioral co-response, that is out there with us in just regular Class A, not in body armor when we're out in a protest, that they're with us in these moments that matter to the community. These are things that people value, and this is what it costs to have that. Passing this, and there are people, there are questions to be raised. It's a 34% of the budget is a big bite. And there are questions that people have about that and whether we can slim that down in any way. I don't see it. And in anything that we would try to do about that, this buys us 6 years to have that conversation, to look at, are there other models? And some of them would cost money to implement. And if people want us to pursue that, it buys us time to have those conversations and not to do it because we have to, because we don't have a choice. So I think that that's all really important. And yeah, I really appreciate your leadership as budget and finance chair, and everyone else who's led this through, and just the collegial attitude of the consensus that we've built together on this. I think I had someone ask me earlier today, what's different about this time compared to a year ago? And
Some of it is that the need has only gotten more urgent, and some of it is that there is really this unity and shared vision of where we need to be this November and 6 years from now. So thank you all for all of this. Thank you, council member. Anyone else want to make comment online? Councilmember Muhlenberg or Councilmember Good? Okay.
Is Councilmember Saunders online?
Oh, and Councilmember Saunders, I apologize. I can't see the list.
I'm
Anybody
here.
else want to make any
I'm
comment?
here.
Hi.
Hi.
Would you like to make a comment, Ellen?
No, I'm good. I'm sitting good here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Good. Any other last thoughts?
Like I mentioned before, a lot of the discussion the last time around, a lot of the public comment was taken into consideration. And I think staff did a great job, and council and Budget Chair Riddle helped shepherd the process through, and all of the tough questions that were asked before were answered. So I'm happy with where it's sitting right now.
Thank you, council member. I would just add very quickly, if I might, to Councilmember Rosenau's comment about what is different. I think that there's an increased understanding and urgency of what is happening here. I find it a little ironic that because have been fiscally responsible for many, many years to try to get us to the place where we were able to buy a little bit of time to have this continued conversation, but it's a very important conversation. I think the other thing I would like to say too is my hat's off to my colleagues here at the dais and online. Each and every one of you independently did your darndest to understand and to ask really deep questions about what was going on. And that investment, no pun intended, that investment in the learning and the learning amongst yourselves in the open meetings has been really extraordinary. That is honestly, I think, the key to where you are right now. That is the path that you chose to go on. You embraced the challenge and understood the urgency of where we are and where we're going as a community. The other thing I would just say is that public safety is something that this community has time in and time out embraced and said, this is something we deeply value as a local commitment to our sense of community and to our the well-being, especially the well-being of our young people. You hear Sergeant Gross tonight in his retirement comments to say that Lake Forest Park is a community that's always had his back. To have an officer say that at his retirement after nearly 28 years just makes my heart feel wonderful as a member of this community, because it illustrates the sense of community and the sense of commitment to public safety, to having conversations and to find better solutions and not just do it the way it's always been done someplace else, or what the county's doing or what our neighbors are doing. It's what Lake Forest Park, what the neighbors, even our new neighbors, have embraced. And so many thanks to the staff for everything they've done. It's been an enormous lift. I mean, Administrator Hill and Director Vaughn particularly have just really worked incredibly hard to make this happen. And once again, I cannot emphasize enough, each and everyone, and this is something I'm saying to the community more than I'm saying to you guys, but I'll say it to you as well. Each and every one of these members of this council have done the work, gotten in deep into trying to understand, sitting down with Director Vaughn or sitting down with Administrator Hill or asking questions of me or asking questions of council leadership about specific things that are not, some of them are not easy to understand. And so I look forward to the continued conversation, and I really thank you for an enormous lift. 12 different meetings on this topic and more conversations to come. And I will stop there, but I do thank you very much for what you've done this far. With that, I will talk about the question at hand. All those in favor of adoption of resolution 26-2084, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake Forest Park, Washington, providing for a ballot measure to be submitted to the qualified electors of the city at the general election to be held on November 3rd, 2026, in conjunction with the state general election, of a proposition authorizing the city to levy regular property taxes in an amount in excess of the limitations provided in Chapter 84.55 RCW for public safety services beginning in 2027, setting forth the ballot title and providing for the other related matters. Please signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? The ayes have it. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, council. I know this has been enormous great work. Thank you very much, Administrator Hill and Director Vaughn and the rest of the team. Deputy Mayor Furtani.
Would it be prudent at this time to have Attorney Pratt guide us on what's okay and not okay anymore?
Yes, I think that not putting Attorney Pratt on the spot or anything, but just briefly, if you don't mind, Attorney Pratt, Cliff's Notes version, and we can do deeper dive at our next session. If it's your will.
Sure. Let's see. Council members can always make your personal opinions known, and please make sure you make it clear that that's your personal opinion, because at this point, state law does not allow you to use any city facilities, personnel, anything, not even a stamp, to argue for passage of this ballot measure, because now it is a ballot measure that you've voted in this resolution. So no longer can you discuss it like this at a meeting. Factual information can be provided. And I know that staff will work on factual information. And then there will also be a pro and con committee. So that information will get out on both sides. But at this point, these meetings, you won't be able to use like this anymore. You can express your personal opinions, and it sounds like you all plan on doing that. Any questions? Yes.
You mentioned a stamp. So if someone sends an email to the city email address, is that, I mean, that's a response from the city email address, I would think is official. But if I forward that to a private email and respond wearing that other, am I responding wearing another different hat, or don't try?
I would not even forward that to your personal email.
Yeah.
That would be using the city email service. So I
Figured.
wouldn't even
I
do
just
that.
Say it out loud. Thank you. Good question.
Yep.
We can get into some minutia a little bit later too.
Yeah, I can give you more details. This is about as good as I can do on the fly, but but I'm happy to answer any questions, but I can give more details. And I'll give you something in writing.
Yeah.
I will give you something.
Vice Chair Goldman.
Right, so just to clarify, does this mean that starting at our July council meetings, public comment will be restricted where even members of the public can't speak on the merits for or against the levy?
That's correct.
Correct. Yes. Right.
Yep. Colleagues, any other questions for Ms. Pratt while she's in the hot seat? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank
Kim.
you.
Appreciate your
Yeah.
time. Okay, and we will definitely have further information coming to you all. It is imperative that we all be cognizant of how we have conversations with the community to make sure that we are not prejudicing anything here. So moving on to item 10, council discussion or action, draft letter to King County Metro about proposed changes to bus route 372. I believe this is Vice Chair Goldman. Are you leading the discussion, or?
I can, yeah.
Please.
And yep, thanks. And my hope is that we'll be able to take action tonight to approve this letter. We've touched on it a few times, most recently at our committee of the whole on Monday. We've made some minor revisions based on the feedback on Monday, just some things that have changed, being more explicit about asking to maintain the 372. That was Councilmember Muhlenberg's suggestion. Centering riders more, being more explicit about the impact this will have on riders. That was Councilmember Riddle's request. And so I think, and a few other sort of grammatical changes. And so the most up-to-date version of the letter is in your packet. I'm open to questions or if people are interested in taking action to approve the letter.
Do you have a question or do you?
Oh,
We saw our friend,
Nancy.
Genevieve at the unveiling of the Octavia Butler here. She was there with some friends from Metro, actually several friends from Metro. So, any questions for Vice Chair Goldman or prime the group?
On that point, I had a separate meeting with Genevieve on a different issue today. And I mentioned that once the letter's approved, we would like to have a meeting and perhaps someone from Metro could attend a council meeting sometime in July to kind of brief us on what's happening and we could share our concerns.
Colleagues, if I may, I do have a question for Vice Chair Goldman. What is the status of Kenmore's discussion? They were talking about it on Monday. I did not get an update on that from them.
My understanding is they are potentially interested, but they need to see the final language.
Okay.
So
okay,
once assuming we approve this tonight,
get it in their
then
hands.
I believe Administrator Hill could go to his counterpart in Kenmore with the final language, and potentially Kenmore would take it up at one of their council meetings.
Their next meeting is on Monday, the 29th, I think is their next.
Oh,
I
next.
thought that's what Terry had told me. I will double check with her, but I will get her a copy of the final version and they can go with that.
I think you're correct. Mayor Herbig reached out. Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. Colleagues,
All right.
Deputy Mayor Furtani.
Well, let's have a debate on this then. So I'd like to propose the approval of the draft letter to King County Metro about proposed changes to bus route 372.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Oh, draft, been moved and seconded to, what's the action we're taking?
To
Approve, okay, approve, thank you. The draft letter to King County, the letter, not draft letter, to King County Metro about the proposed changes to bus routes 372. Questions, comments? Councilmember Riddle.
Just a comment that appreciate all of the effort to incorporate our comments into the letter. I think the letter reads very well now. I think it's very clear and precise, but also persuasive. And I am happy to endorse this letter.
Deputy Mayor Furtani.
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Riddle on that. The fact is that basically, I can't believe the number of people during FIFA who have been using the 372. I mean, it's just been remarkable. So the point is getting rid of this line makes absolutely no sense to me. It is a well-subscribed line. And I know my students, even at North Seattle College, use it to commute because they don't just go to one campus, they go to several campuses. And so getting from UW Bothell to UW Seattle in a timely manner is a very, very important thing. So I appreciate what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rosenau.
Earlier this week, in Seattle, there was a forum for one of the city council races, and candidates were bringing this up in that forum as well. There's a lot of concern in North Seattle about these same issues. I've heard similar things from colleagues as well as from Kenmore. Bothell and Woodinville have also expressed interest in this letter and I think would like to see it as well, and would be interested in signing on. I've had really productive conversations about it with folks in the Seattle mayor's office and with business leaders along the Lake City corridor as well, and who see us as part of a corridor with them and want that continuity, want them to be able to connect for shopping, for cultural events, to be able to come to when a Supreme Court justice is speaking at Town Center, they should be able to come here and be part of that and not need a car to be able to get to that and not have to walk across a busy road and make a transfer. So I'm glad that this is building some momentum, and I'm starting to hear I'm hearing about it from people who heard about it from someone that I talked to before, and it's exciting to have it bubbling through like that and catching fire. And I hope that we're heard.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'm looking forward to all of us signing it. Any other comments? All those in favor of approving the letter to King County Metro about proposed changes to bus route 372, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Guys have it. It passes unanimously. Thank you, Council. Looking forward to that. And we can coordinate communication with Kenmore going forward. I guess Administrator Bill can as well. I know Mayor Herbig is anxious to get it before council. So thank you, colleagues. This is great.
And I would
Great.
also ask for Woodinville and Bothell to be sure of that as well. I know that they're interested in these issues.
Okay. Well,
Mayor, I just had
Oh,
one little question.
yeah.
Were the council members looking to sign it individually, or were you passing it as a body and having the mayor sign it?
We passed it as a body, so we don't need to individually sign anymore. That would be my.
That's up to you folks.
As long as it's unanimously, supported by the council, so that's probably all we need. And then our logo.
yeah, just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure.
Yeah, however you like.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And from a practical perspective, have we talked about if we're putting it out for signatures from others, do we want to set a deadline on that, or will we send it as it stands and then as new signatures, every couple weeks, send an updated version? How do we want to?
I think we can give them sort of a heads up for, consideration at their next meeting, and then move forward from there. I think there's a time sensitivity, although we have missed the window as we know. So, but it's not through anybody's fault by any stretch of the imagination. It's just the way it works. So, everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's move on to council member reports. Anyone have a council member report? Mr. Goldman.
I could keep the theme going. I attended the Regional Transit Committee meeting last week, and the topic was King County Metro and their long-term planning. And so they've started their planning process. Their goal is by 2028 to update some of their long-range planning documents. And when I say long range, I mean planning over the next 10, 20 plus years. So some of those key documents, there's their strategic plan, their service guidelines, their long range plan. There's going to be opportunities for the public to weigh in, for jurisdictions to weigh in, but these are really important because when Metro is looking at, which route should get more service, which route should get less service, they're using these service guidelines. What factors are the most important in making those decisions? So it is very important that we weigh in as to what we feel the right metrics are for public transportation levels.
Hey, thank you, Vice Chair Goldman. Colleagues, any other Councilmember Rosenau?
I sat in on the second half of the North King County Coalition on Homelessness meeting. I couldn't make it to the first part, but I was there at the end, and Valerie Sasson mentioned that, and tried to twist my arm pretty hard. The KCRHA Continuum of Care Committee funding is somewhat dependent on having 3 electeds on it, and there are currently only 2. They don't have to come from Lake Forest Park, but they would like someone. And so if anyone has copious spare time and would like to attend those meetings, it would bring in more money for homelessness and continuum of care, and that's all to the good. So strongly consider it, and I'm reach out to Valerie, or I'm happy to put you in touch with folks. Someone should do it.
When do they meet?
Thank you.
I have that, and I think it's Thursdays during the day, but I may be misremembering. It's not every month. It's not every week. I'll find it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, other Councilmember reports. Okay. I'll be very brief. It was like a series of community events over the last couple of weeks. Started with the end of school year party at the Lake Forest Park Civic Club. Huge thanks to Interim Chief Zanella and his team. They were making sure everybody was safe. There was over 1,000 people there. Tremendous number of kids. It was quite extraordinary. And we had Officer Johnson was making sure everybody was safe on the corner. We had people moving around, and it was a really safe, fun environment, great weather. If you're interested, I have an amazing panorama I took from the dock of the beach with all the kids on it. And if you don't think I can herd cats, I'll tell you how hard it is to keep teenagers from running down the dock when you're taking a pano. So I can herd cats with the best of them. I have a couple of pictures with kids looking like Gumby in the middle of my pano and had to do it over again. But it was a great event, and many thanks to the police department. Everybody was safe crossing the road, no issues with parking, tons of people parked here. Many people walked, rode their bikes. It was great. Secret Gardens party and tour Friday and Saturday. Great turnout for all those events. And the weather held up famously. Oh, there it is.
Oh.
Yeah, it's you see those kids right there? There was a parent behind me yelling at them, "Don't move." But yeah, it's hard actually at this point. This is late in the day, but there was over 1,000 people. It was the biggest attended end of the year shoreline thing that's happened in memory. And also I attended the Always Summer 1-year anniversary. And it was also the Father's Day and the solstice and all sorts of things. There was a great local band playing there with some of our friends there. And it's fun to see a local business thriving and people having so much fun going there. It's really wonderful. As always, my comments about animals. I have seen 3 deer running around down here in the Burke recently, so watch out when you're driving. And it's also stickleback season, if you know what a stickleback is. And so you'll find spiky fish heads all over Lake Forest Park. And if you're walking barefoot, I wish you the best because it can be a little bit uncomfortable.
Especially on the Burke Gilman.
Especially on the Burke Gilman. Well, and I will close with my daughter's famous quote when we were walking down the street down here. When she was about 2, she turned to me, she saw a fish on the middle of the road that probably an eagle or an osprey had dropped. And she said, "Dada, this is a road, it's for people and not for fish."
Cannot argue.
Administrator Hill, did you have anything to add to your report?
Since you're talking about parties, I just thought I would add that last week, the staff did a potluck barbecue here at City Hall. We all cooked. I smoked a brisket. Mike Reed did some salmon. We had ceviche, we had street corn, we had lemon bars, and I'm gonna forget somebody and they're gonna be so mad at me, but just burgers and hot dogs and just all kinds of good stuff. But the best thing about it is it got together all the different departments from public works to, engineering to, just everybody hanging out, chatting, getting to know each other. We've got a lot of new employees, and so it was good. So hats off to the staff that put that together. It was really well done, and nice to see everybody get together. So
yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Bill. Deputy Refer Tony.
And the city administrator's report reminded me, I wanted to thank Public Works for being so quick at the tree fall on 184th. That was amazing. It came down, there was a short power outage because I understand the power company had to turn the power off so they could work. But within like 20 minutes, the power was back on. So your crew did an amazing job. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, speaking of civil capital projects, 35th got its first layer pavement today. Yes, big shout out to Jim Stetzer and the team down there who've suffered through considerable discomfort. Also, a big shout out to Public Works and to Director Heaton for getting the Animal Acres fence completed. I know we have a couple little tiny things to be sorted, but it looks fantastic. I've already gotten comments from so many people. So, and I know Councilmember Muhlenberg will also be very happy about that because that's been a passion of his as well to make sure that that gets sorted. Is there anything else for the good of the order, my friends? No executive session, no. Okay. Because when I do that, I open my mouth and say, and somebody says there's an executive session or something. So with that, thank you all for a great evening. We're adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.
Well done, sir.